over at the University of Chicago, this is very distressing news. One of the professors there, Dr. Rebecca Journey, not the verb or whatever that part of speech is, that's her name, Journey, was going to be teaching a class called The Problem of Whiteness, which would have been an analysis of how whiteness as both a racial and a socioeconomic concept has evolved over time. That sounds fascinating to me, actually. I would be, were I a student at the University of Chicago, I'd sign up for it. I mean, this is actually one of the big issues of our time, and frankly has been, one of the big issues at the core of the American experience for 400 years on this continent. And I use the word American in the loosest sense. But apparently the very idea that such a class might be held upset a student by the name of Daniel Schmidt, who in the past has praised or endorsed the presidential campaign of Hitler-praising rapper Kanye West and openly promoted the work of Nick Fuentes, the Holocaust denier. So this student goes off and basically doxes Dr. Journey and posts all of her personal information and stuff. And she starts getting so many attacks from fascists via social media and everything else that she finally says, okay, I won't teach the class. And, apparently this young man who started this attack against her is still enrolled, in the school. And I'm just baffled by this. Why the University of Chicago would sanction caving to right-wing hate mobs, basically. I mean, what happened to academic freedom and integrity? What happened to standing up to bullies? The whole thing is astonishing to me. There's a story about, I read about this over at rawstory.com. The article is titled Harassment Campaign Incited by Nazi Promoting Student Forced Professor to Pull Class. A senior at the University of Chicago who was interviewed by one of the reporters, his name is Watson Lubin, tells the Times, and by the way, there's a New York Times article about this. This is where Raw Story got the stuff from and where I first saw it. And he told the Times that he fears the school is setting a bad precedent, quote, where you can, under the auspices of free speech, more or less intimidate and harass a professor and sick your incredible following on TikTok and Twitter on them for the purpose of chilling speech. Clearly, that is what is happening here. Clearly. So, one topic to discuss, if you have thoughts on that, love to hear them. The second, and I mentioned this when I was speaking with Congressman Mark Pocan earlier in the first hour of the program, the Supreme Court has, in fact, it happened while I was out of town. I'm assuming that, I think this happened while Jefferson was on the air. I don't know if you guys talked about this, or maybe it happened after, when we were doing best of shows. But the Supreme Court came along and basically said, separate but equal is still illegal if it if like a lunch counter wants to put up a sign that says we don't serve black people. You still can't do that. But a lunch counter may put up a sign that says, because cooking is a creative art, right? Chefs are artists. There's, you can not just make that argument, you can actually back up that argument. That because it's an art form, there could be a sign in a restaurant now that says, we don't serve gay people, we don't serve trans people, we don't serve lesbians, we don't serve anybody in the LGBTQ community, period, forget it. Go someplace else. So now we have separate but equal, specifically for the queer community. But I think that, what's next? Is it going to be, Jews not welcome here? Irishmen and dogs not welcome here? I mean, these are, the classic signs in American history. Obviously, black and colored, or colored and white water fountains or schools. I mean, what kind of precedent has this established? I think I am very troubled by this. I thought about writing an op-ed about it, but so many people have been commenting on it that it would have just been one more voice in the din. But I wanted to be sure to bring it up here on this program for discussion. And you wonder, you know, what is the next step? I mean, not just from the Supreme Court. I mean, this was a manufactured controversy. In fact, the woman who sued because her web design company didn't want to design wedding sites for gay people, for gay marriages, literally did not even have a company. Just created had never done business. All she had done was file articles of incorporation, which anybody can do for, you know, $100 in any state. And then made up her lawyer, by the way, who is Josh Hawley's wife, who litigated this. Her lawyer then argued before the Supreme Court and the lower courts that this guy Stewart in Los Angeles wanted her to make a gay wedding, and therefore she had a case, she had a tort, she had a harm, she had legal standing to talk about this in court. And when finally a reporter from the New Republic tracked down Stewart, we don't know his last name, he didn't want it publicized for fear of the right-wing hordes coming at him, the way they went after this professor at the University of Chicago. But when they tracked down Stewart, the person that was listed in the documents, in the court filings, and that, by the way, is a matter of public record, he was like, not only did I not want a gay wedding with Bob, but I've been married to a woman for 15 years and we've got a kid. And we're happily married. So, no, it wasn't me. It wasn't anybody. I mean, the whole case was based on a lie, just to get this before the Supreme Court. Just so the Supreme Court could begin the process of attributing second-class humanities status, legal second-class status, to gays, lesbians, and trans people, and bisexuals, and you know, and just the whole community. This is deeply and profoundly wrong, and it should tell us everything we need to know about who these people are that Donald Trump and over the last decade or two, that Leonard Leo and his friends, this whole like right-wing movement, have with the billionaires behind them, and now Leonard Leo himself is controlling over $1 billion. You know, where they're trying to take this country, which is back to the time when gays were in the closet, and blacks, quote, knew their place, and women were barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen, and workers had no rights and couldn't unionize, and Christian prayers were said in school every morning. I remember that from the 1950s when I was in school. In fact, the kid who lived in the house behind my house, his name was Tom Stedman. I don't know if he's still around. I haven't seen him since we were 8 years old or 9 years old. His family moved away. But he was Jewish. And I remember we'd be sitting in class in the second, third grade at our elementary school, and they'd come on the PA system and say the morning prayer, and in the very end they'd say, in the name of Lord Jesus. And, you know, and I was at that time old enough to know that Tom's religion was different than mine, and it didn't involve Jesus. This is the world that the Republicans want to take us back to. In fact, I think they want to amplify it. They want to triple down on it. They want to make it even more radical, even more vicious, even more hate-filled than it was when I was a kid growing up. And of course, you know, as a white Christian kid, I was insulated from most of it, but I could see what was going on around me. And now we have the Supreme Court, the friggin' Supreme Court doing this. Well, there is now an official challenge to this. The Supreme Court case began because Colorado has a law that says you may not, if you run a business, you may not discriminate against people in protected classes. That includes women, that includes the LGBTQ community, that includes African Americans, it includes Hispanics, it includes Muslims, Jews. Basically you cannot discriminate against them. And this woman wanted to discriminate against gay people, with her web designing business that didn't exist. Well, Arizona has a law that says the same thing. And Arizona's Attorney General, Chris Mays, who looks like a woman who takes no crap from anybody. I mean, she's the senior most law enforcement official in the state. And she has just come right out and said, no, I am not going to, well, here's her statement. This was a statement that she issued yesterday, quote, or I guess a couple days ago when the decision came down. Today, a woefully misguided majority of the United States Supreme Court has decided that businesses open to the public may, in certain circumstances, discriminate against LGBTQ plus Americans. While my office is still reviewing the decision to determine its effects, I agree with Justice Sotomayor. The idea that the Constitution gives businesses the right to discriminate is, quote, profoundly wrong. She goes on to say, well, it's a quote from Sotomayor. And then she goes on to say, despite today's ruling, Arizona law prohibits discrimination in places of public accommodation, including discrimination because of sexual orientation and gender identity. If any Arizonan believes that they have been the victim of discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, national origin, or ancestry in any place of public accommodation, they should file a complaint with my office. I will continue to enforce Arizona's public accommodation law to its fullest extent.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
God bless you, Chris Mays.